happens. He's still got Mackay, still got Mackay, still got Mackay, and Mackay goals.
Gibbons talking about selling candy and kicking a beauty.
What about this ball inside 50? Control from nowhere. Wasting no time, Jack News. Set shot. He strikes it beautifully. He's got it. The Blues win it. Jack News after the siren has won the game for Carlton. That is unbelievable.
Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian Brownie. I'm joined as always by my good mate Lockie Lydiard. And like most trade and free agency periods, Carlton, look, we're right in the thick of it and there is a lot to cover. So we thought that we needed to bring in the big guns to help us out. So we are very excited to introduce our first ever guest on the Navy Blue Corner podcast. This man has amassed over 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. He is an analytical wizard and the most charismatic Carlton man you'll ever find is, of course, none other than PommyInOz. Welcome, Pom.
Jesus, what an intro. I tell you,
that?
That's the best intro I've ever had. My wife doesn't give us good intros than that either, so I'll rate that. Thank you very much, guys.
No worries. Thanks for coming on. It's the first guest, so we've got to make it a big one. And I guess, before we get completely stuck into everything that is going on currently and all the names that have been branded about, I just have to ask, going into this off-season, who was what were the positions that we were looking at targeting? Where did you see the holes in the list?
I think for me, the biggest one, the area that I was more worried about was I'm always prevent the issue before it becomes an issue. So I thought someone in the key position down back, someone to develop was the biggest key, because I feel like the last couple of years we've clung on to someone for retirement and then suddenly being like, oh God, we've got a hole here. We need to go out and waste a draft pick to buy someone. So that was probably my biggest concern. Outside of that, I think it's what everyone else's was, a bit of outside run. I questioned where the creativity was coming from now Eddie Betts had gone. I know Durden and Honey look a sort, but I don't think they're quite ready today to hit them elite numbers. So I was looking for that. But outside of that, apart from the key position, a bit of outside run, I was hoping that we take whoever our bottom three are and make them better. That was what I was looking for. Having 25 players ready for the first team, and our 25th is better than what our 25th is today.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. I like that. It looks like we're at least targeting a couple of those, maybe not all of them. So let's get straight into it, because we have finally a player that has officially signed with us. We've got George Hewett as a restricted free agent. Obviously, our midfield seems to have been something we've spoken about quite a lot over the past couple of seasons as being super thin, and just how many times opposition teams just ran through the middle with no one laying any kind of pressure. It looks like George Hewett is that kind of guy. So, Pommy, what is a George Hewett type going to bring to this Carlton midfield? And do you think that he was the right sort of person to bring in?
Well, yeah, I think I'll look at the trade period that Richmond had with Dion Prestia, and the value we're about to play for Cerra looks like it's almost identical to what they paid for that. And I remember at the time when Prestia came in, there was a lot of questions like, is he classy enough? What's he bring? I look at Hewett being our Dion Prestia, and then Cerra as that icing on the cake that Richmond already had internally. And I think what Hewett brings is, you look at Ollie Wines, a guy that goes around and does the tough stuff, does the simple stuff well. That's what Hewett does. He's tough. He's hard to the ball. I think we lack a barometer of pressure in our midfield, and I think that's where it all falls down. Our midfield stats this year, bottom two for pretty much everything. And we look at a bad year, 2017, 2018, we were bottom four. So we were actually better when we won 2 games than we were finishing 13th. He stops that straight away for me, because he's Ed Kerno, but he can use the ball a bit better than Ed. He's a shade younger than Ed by some way. And he's come from a final side that plays with young kids. So this guy's whole mantra at the moment is built to come into Carlton. And I think that's a really exciting thing, because not many finals footballers come who are playing to teams outside of the finals. So that instantly brings a bit of recent finals experience to us.
Oh, I tell you what, Ian and I usually have a bit of an issue where we agree with each other too much on the points that we make. So you're gonna have to throw some wild stuff out there because I completely agree with that 100%. I think, yeah, a big part of it, like you kind of mentioned, is I think he's going to be able to elevate these other guys too, take some pressure off Walshy, do some of that hard stuff for Cripps, the defensive stuff, like you mentioned. I'm obsessed with it. And the people that are getting upset about the 4-year element and then the 450K in quotes like deal, like I'm just not buying into that because he's gonna come into that midfield and everyone's gonna get better because of it.
Mate, I think the biggest stat for me as well that I can throw out is as a tagger this year, he has averaged 17% decrease in output of the guy that he's tagging. The exception to the rule there is Mr. Steele, who beat him. But at the time, Mr. Steele was in a stratosphere that no one had seen. But McRae, 17%, 32% from Hopper in the final, where Hopper was flying at that point. And also when he's got into the back half and taken on their most crafty small forward, Dustin Martin, 21% down. Like, this guy is very versatile. And nowadays, I think we lack that. Ed Kerno this year, to me, showed he's slowing down. And I like him in the half-forward line. I think he brings that tackle pressure, which no one else does. It's a young man's game tagging, but he also has the ability to find the pill. So he's averaging over 20 tagging, which I think is a huge asset as well, because it means we're stopping someone productive, but he's also being productive himself. So I'm really excited about this acquisition. I actually think this will be our best acquisition over Cerra. I think this guy is going to make more of an impact straight away.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it seems like over the past couple of years, we've been looking for that superstar midfielder to come in, and that's all it has been. It's been, can we get a Cornelio, a Shield, whoever it is. We've been trying to bring all these key guys in. And so it's the first time I feel like we've really gone, okay, what do we actually need in this midfield? And I know you've been investigating certain components to it, and tackling was something that you saw as a big issue for us. And we've highlighted that and gone after a guy and who you got 13 tackles in an elimination final. That's ridiculous. Gross. No one in our team could get close to that. And it was something that was brought up quite a bit over, throughout the final series, where the best teams, they have those couple of midfielders that can really mitigate the opposition and do the hard stuff. And they were saying that Brisbane struggle because they don't have that grunt midfielder. Everyone there is trying to get those possessions. And you look at all the best teams, they have a couple of them. Melbourne, they have Harms, they have Viney that does that work as well. And we have Cripper that's such a weird player. No one plays like he does. And so if we can get a guy in like Hewett that can allow him to put on those blocks and make it easier for Cripper to get the ball out for others, and Walshy, it's just going to be an incredible midfield now that we have someone that can actually do the hard work. And he's so consistent as well. You know what you're going to get every single week. He gets, he's not going to get like 30 possessions every week, but you don't need him to, because he's going to allow everyone else to get them.
Oh, yeah. And I think the more time he's doing that hard yakka, it's the less time that Walsh is doing the hard yakka. And that's what Prestia brought to Richmond. Dustin Martin didn't have to go back and get his own ball. Someone was doing that for him, so he could skirt the pack and wait for that handball, wait for that kick. And that's what we want to do ultimately with Walsh. In my opinion, Walsh would be wasted doing what Judd did and collecting the ball. We want him just outside, waiting to be released, and he can then impact the game. And I think that brings that in. And one thing that turns me on about Hewett is his hair. I know this is stupid. This is a guy that doesn't have social media accounts. His hair looks a complete mess. You can tell this guy is only focused on football. That is all he cares about. He doesn't care about having a beer. He doesn't care about functions. He's there to play footy. And I think that brings a standard to the players that I'm here to be the blue-collar boy of this football club. Get on my back and I'll lead you guys to glory. So I'm excited about that.
Are you putting it on the record that Georgie Hewett does not like a beer?
No, I don't think he's about having beers and whining and dining celebrities. I think he'd be like, I want to get on this show and have a beer with these guys.
Sure, okay.
And chat footy. I don't think he wants to do sponsors things.
But yeah, I guess going back to Lockie throughout, alluding to good old Kane Corns, he loves to throw out something that allows us to give us something to talk about, which is always good. You mentioned the 4-year deal, and a couple of people have been going, what are you doing giving this guy a 4-year deal? What do you make of that, Pommy? Because, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
I mean, I look at it this way, that George Hewett wanted a long-term deal, which I think makes sense to me when I'm someone like George Hewett. I'm 25 years old. I'm in a state that's not my native state. He wants a bit of security with COVID. I think COVID has taught these players that football isn't free of disaster. And I don't understand. I know Sydney gave him 2 years, but he wanted 4. We gave him the 4. I think, to me, if we're buying a player, George Hewitt's going to be there when we win our next flag and probably when we're in the beginning of our next dynasty. So if I've identified him as my next dynasty footballer, why not lock him away for a long time? Because the last thing we want to do is every 2 years have to fight off uncontracted free agencies, which I think you look at good clubs like GWS, they've tied their players long-term who they've identified as key pillars. And usually what happens, like Cameron, when he's out of contract, they're getting a benefit from getting rid of him, but they've already internally got the players to replace him. So I think that's a good model for Carlton to follow. And I like that because by Hewitt's 4 years, hopefully Carroll's made it. Hopefully Kent's made the step up to be a non-baller. And we can maybe sell this guy for a profit. Or we keep him on. So I like it for me. Ken Corns, he's as daft as a barnyard brush, isn't he, really?
Yeah, he is. And I think something that I feel like everyone is forgetting as well is because he wasn't a restricted free agent, Sydney could have matched whatever we threw at him. So for the fact of us potentially having to overpay or make the contract slightly longer, that's basically to stop them trying to match it. And then also making sure that we've clicked over certain things that allow the compensation pick that goes back towards Sydney being good enough that they go, okay, well, we're getting an end of second rounder. We don't need to, match this so we can get a trade out of it. And they're just little things you have to do. And I don't think we're overpaying him. And the fact that everything you've said there about tying your players down that you think are going to be your good players going forward, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, like a second round pick, if we paid 25, people would have kicked off. Like, you don't pay a second rounder for a guy that's not going to. I always have a rule, and it's a soccer rule. You don't pay over a second rounder for someone who's not going to get your bum off a seat. George Hewitt's not going to get your bum off a seat. He's going to bore the paint off walls the way he plays. It's the simple stuff. It's Roy Keane football. It's see ball, get ball, handball it to a player who can turn the game over. So getting him for free, it helps Sydney out. We've manipulated the rule for them. 450 is peanuts as well. I mean, you've got to remember, Carlton have paid more than 450 for some complete Jacob cream crackers. So I'm happy giving him 450.
Yeah, and you can't win in that regard either. Like 5 months ago, we were all saying that Matt Kennedy had no future at this club. Gets the 1 year deal for having an awesome end of the season. Oh, only 1 year? Give him 3 years. Why are we not locking him up? So, like, where is the...
It's the curse of being a Carlton fan. Like 1 minute... It's like Eddie Betts this morning going to Geelong. Like, the talk at the end of the year was, I hope Carlton don't give jobs for the boys. And I hope the board don't get involved. And Voss has total say on who he brings in. And now Carlton haven't kept Betts. Whichever way you look at it, or Betts has gone to Geelong, people are saying, surely someone should have overruled Ross and let Betts stay. And it's like, well, you can't have it both ways. We either let the coach pick who he wants, or we just pick the people we like and say, Voss, welcome to Carlton, mate. So I agree with you. I mean, Kennedy, I like it because I think Kennedy is a great lesson for them young boys. He's worked really hard. He's got another year. And I reckon if he backs up his another year, he's probably got 2. But if it shows, it keeps him hungry because the first time you've seen Kennedy be any good was on a year deal. So I'm happy to keep giving him 10 1-year deals. If he keeps this level up, who cares? Because really, he's got a contract forever, providing he responds. So I like that. Personally, I like that because Kennedy at the moment, let's be honest, is he best 22 for the next 10 years? Hewitt probably is. Is Kennedy? I don't think so.
And yeah, if we're trying to get, a Stocker, a Kemp, a Carroll through there in a couple of years, is there going to be the room for him, Cripper, and, Hewett in there? We've always talked about having Ed, Kennedy, and Cripper in there being those slower guys. And what kind of mix can you get, and how many of those type of players can you have run through the midfield? And I think that Hewett probably is a little bit better in most of those components compared to the others. And that's probably the issue with Kennedy maybe going forward. And that's why the longevity isn't there. But I mean, we saw just how good he can be in this second half of the season. So there's no way that he can't continue things and then can keep getting those 1-year deals or turn them into 4-year deals. Who knows?
Oh, mate, spot on. And let's be honest, in the dream scenario, this time next year, Voss has used Stocker on the ball where he was born to play. And suddenly Stocker's numbers are where Kennedy's are. And then we can just say to Kennedy, look, thank you for your time. We'll seek a trade for you. Stocker's now got that job. That's a win for Carlton. That is a huge win if Stocker delists Kennedy. That's a massive win. So that's how I look at it. We want our young boys to get rid of our next best player.
Spot on.
Absolutely spot on. The next player that has been linked since the last time that we ended up having a chat is Lewis Young. He's nominated Carlton, which was one completely out of left field. We've been talking about bringing in this key defender that's maybe he's not completely young. He's still been in the system a couple of years, but someone that's ready to go. And I think it seems to make sense for the profile that we were looking for. We're maybe looking at a Jared Brander as well. Pommy, what do you think of being linked to Lewis Young, and are you happy to bring him across?
Yeah, I look at Melbourne. I think Melbourne's backline, for me, is the best backline in the AFL, how they set it up. And you've got Petty down there, who's not everyone's cup of tea, but he's a giant. He's like 200 centimetres. Young is 200 centimetres. And his job is to stay on his man and don't let him mark. And that's what Lewis Young, I think his underrated skill is his ability to spoil. Seen a few VFL games. This guy, if he doesn't mark it, he stops you marking it, which, in my opinion, looking at Melbourne, they've got young guys, fast guys who pick up that crumb, off they go. People talk about his field kicking. It isn't great. He field kicks like my nan, and she's been dead since 2008, so it's not great. And there's Adrian's nan reference that you wanted, Adrian. Shout out to you.
There it is.
But yeah, the kick is appalling. But if you look at Petty, he gets the ball, handball to Salem. We've got Sard. And then you look at May and Lever. Well, we've got Wheater in, and we've got Kemp, where Kemp is the same body profile as Stephen May. Huge intercept beast, rolls off his man. They start him at fullback, which then allows Petty to slot in with him, and he just does what he wants. That is the model that Port play, and that is the model that I think Voss will bring with him. So I think Young, he really excites me because he is Liam Jones with defensive accountability first, where Jones, he loves that intercept. I think we've got too many interceptors coming through, because you see Wheater now, he's got the confidence. He's like, oh my God, I can get that ball. And that's sometimes where it falls down with us. I'm excited about this because someone's done the hard work for us. They've blooded him. So all we've got to do now is keep the guy hungry. And if he can, again, end of this year, Liam Jones is suddenly replaced by him, another huge dub for this football club, because our backline's got a 22-year-old.
Yeah, you're spot on, Pom. God, you're getting me far too excited for October.
Sorry,
I'm going to have to bottle this for the next freaking 6 months. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it too. It sounds like we're not going to have to give up too much to get him. And yeah, I'm definitely not convinced that he's going to be, playing round one or anything like that with how our backline is currently set up. But like you said, the first thing you wanted was that kind of protection. And we were, like a couple of months ago on this podcast, we were saying, what are we going to do if one more injury for a tall goes down? We are royally screwed. So yeah, like you said, he's got a few years in the system to, get the cobwebs out. And yeah, I don't know how you can be too upset about this one.
I think the understated thing for it as well is Hewett and Young, both guys that have played finals recently. Both have played it recently. And that's something that they're going to bring in. And I always say this on Blue Abroad a lot. When they talk about bringing people with finals experience, and we bring in Daisy, who hadn't played a final for like a decade, like eventually it becomes a dream for them. But these guys have literally just gone from a training session in final sides And suddenly, straight away, they're going to spot things and go, we didn't do this at Sydney. We didn't do this at the Doggies. And even though Lewis Young probably had less to do with the finals, he was around forwards that he was prepping for finals. He will be able to identify that intensity differential. And I'm excited about that because that is something that will be brought to these players because most of our players don't even know what a final is.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I guess like probably the criticism maybe towards him, apart from his field kicking as well, has been the fact that he's playing behind, I guess, a lot of other key tools at the Doggies who don't have great raps themselves. That's probably the biggest deficiency with the Western Bulldogs that people have been throwing around is the key tools aren't amazing. And that's probably something that slightly worries me a little bit, that if, he is this young guy, he's struggling to get a game over those few, but I still think that at least he is still young and he clearly can still develop. The fact he's so tall enough that he can be a bit versatile as well. We've just lost a Levi Casbolt who can go forward and go back, can pinch hit in the ruck. He sort of ticks all those boxes. And I guess that, having Luke Beveridge as a coach, he throws him around everywhere. And maybe sometimes that's hard for a younger guy. And hopefully he can come in and just nail down that defensive spot. Learn that behind Jones and a Wiedering, who, imagine learning behind those couple of guys. And I hopefully he can really, take over Liam Jones' spot in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the big thing about him as well, you look at him, he really broke into the side when they were trying to make finals. Like he started to come back into the reckoning. He trusted Beveridge, trusted him in the danger games, really. Only lost out on his position because Keith he came back. So you would have said he was probably stiff to not play the final because he was doing okay down the back. But Beveridge is a weird cookie, isn't he? You look at Hugo Hagen, like the most exciting draft prospect for years. He put him on ice. We know Beveridge doesn't hand out games to people ad hoc, particularly key position players. So I think for me, what makes me feel better is he doesn't throw them out. He throws in the danger positions. He always trusts experience and then rewards it towards the end of the year. And I thought Young being brought in the danger game says to me that obviously he's got something about him. And I like some of the Doggy talk at the moment that they wish him well. They do want to keep him, but they understand he's a young player who wants to play. And I look at Doggy's backline, and although it's not sexy, why would you, if you were him, want to take a risk on getting rid of Eastonwood, Keith and Cordy? It's got you into finals. Like for me, I understand Doggy's mantra, and we're not there yet, but I'd imagine in a year's time, we're going to be having that conversation. Do you want to jettison Jones when we've made finals? Surely we keep a winning backline. So we've never been in that position, though. We're lucky to win one game, let alone two in a row, let alone finals.
Remind me.
But I'm excited about that. Lewis Young, I think, hard work's been done for us. All we've got to do is keep him okay.
Yeah, giving away pretty much nothing for him is going to be great as well. Just an absolute free hit. One thing is looking at, we wanted the key defender, the young guy coming through to be the Jones replacement. It was the biggest thing I think we were really talking about the last couple of weeks. This looks like obviously this is going to nail it down. Do you think we still look to take someone in the draft as well as maybe a little bit of an insurance policy, having someone else to come through? Or do you think that I'd be pretty happy that they've nailed this one by bringing in Young?
Well, I think like Rhett Bazzo is the guy that I'm proper in love with. For those who have been watching my stuff, we know that he's a key defender prospect. The way I feel now, I would probably use that second round pick on maybe another small forward, maybe a wingman, get a wing in. If Josh Goater's there, maybe that additional help someone that is again in the mold of a George Hewett with a turn of pace. And think, well, you know what, we've maybe got a bit of outside run and a more rotation. So it gives Carlton options now because there is no real position they need to sort out today. And they've covered the hard ones because we know small forwards and wingmen, they're 10 a penny in a draft.
No, definitely agree. Look, next player is Adam Cerra. He's the big fish that hopefully we can land in this trade period. It looks like the talk is going pretty well between them. All the talk is obviously, pick six. It's definitely going to be part of the deal. Carlton supporters are saying it's pick six and nothing. Freo supporters and it seems like the football world is saying we have to give everything to Freo just so they can get Jordan Clark through the door as well. What for you gets the deal done, Pommy?
I think pick 6, a future second and a future third back. I think that's probably the best Carlton can do in this situation. I think if you look at that as well, I would say Fremantle are bottom 6 next year. So let's be conservative and say they finish 12th. So what's that? That's going to be pick 26. Carlton, if we finish in the 8, that'll be we'll be giving up pick 36. So we're probably only going back in the draft 8 positions in that for our second pick. So it's not a huge issue for me, because I would hope now Carlton are in a situation once we make finals. Our list is 23.8 average age as it stands today. So that's very young. It's very, very baby. It's not like we need to attack the draft hard. So we'll still have our first rounder next year, which we can maybe break up into 2 later picks. So I think this is the year that you give away your first, because I think we've done the hard work. You guys did that wonderful preview of the last 10 drafts. We've used our first a lot. We've really acquired talent now. So we don't have to keep hitting the draft hard. So this is probably the year with a compromised draft in the terms of the Victorian kids who we love picking up, haven't played lots of football. It's probably a good year for us to take a back seat, get established talent, because Josh Rochelle's my boy, pick 6, probably there. I'll be honest, Adam Cerra is 10 times the football Rochelle is today. So potentially Rochelle might be a superstar though, but right now in the next 2 years, Cerra is going to be a better footballer. So next year we have a first. We'll get lucky. There might be another Josh Rochelle. There might be another player there then. And we never know then. Honey, Durden, they might be superstars this year. So I like it. I like it. I don't like the uncontracted thing though. I don't like paying for that. That's the English in me. But other than that, I'm happy with that deal.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic that we are so ready to launch into at some stage, because I agree with you. The proposed deal that you put out then is if I put my money on something on what will actually get done, I think that's right. And then I think for someone of his caliber, I think honestly our first round probably makes sense. But then with the uncontracted thing, I feel like we should be in such a better leverage position with this, and therefore in a worse leverage position for the SPS deal. And yeah, that's a whole nother argument. But if the deal that you just said then is the one that goes down, I think that's good. And we got a question from Lawrence regarding this. He thinks pick 6 and a future third for Cerra and a future 4th is about right, and then thought that the one that you put out then was a little bit overs. For me, the difference between those two is so minute, and when it gets to trading those later picks, I'm not too phased, because like you said, we're going to get Cerra in. He's going to be one of our best players. Like, let's win now.
Yeah, I think the way you judge a trade as well is hindsight. So let's just say we pre-record this and we go back and listen to it in 5 years, and best on ground grand final is Adam Cerra. You'll look back and say, Jesus, pick 6 and pick 28 we gave for that guy. What a deal. Like, you'll look back and you'll be laughing all the way to the bank. So, like, look at West Coast. I always go back to the Judd trade. People say we lost that because Kennedy's happened to play a few games and kick a few snags from 10 yards and thinking he's brilliant. Like, I've never seen Kennedy kick a goal from more than 20 metres. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure, not being big-headed, I could do Kennedy's job in that midfield as well, mate.
Probably.
Like, you kick it to me on the square, I'll be gone. But everyone says they win that because of results, because West Coast have made finals. West Coast have won one. If Judd had won one, though, you would have said we won that trade. So
absolutely,
it's how it's judged. So at the moment, yes, it feels overs. I personally think if he had 2 years to go on his contract and he'd requested a trade to us, I'd say he's a first and second, maybe 2 firsts, because they always build potential. And look at Tim Kelly. He had 1 good year. Do you know what I mean? He had a good year the year before, and then he had 1 stellar year. And West Coast gave kidneys, firstborn. Yeah. I heard they've got frozen Ben Cousins semen in Geelong at the moment.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like from that deal, they paid that much for it. So like it's a lot of money, these players. So I actually think if you look at it that way, the way this contract works is ridiculous. The IFL is Mickey Mouse with this contract. Yeah. We've got to just judge it as if he's got 5 years on his deal. And I think we're actually getting a bargain in caliber of player. So I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the reason that I do think that the deal you've proposed is like still slightly overs, is because I just can't wrap my head around how an uncontracted player, how that club can have any bargaining position. And it just frustrates me to no end. And yeah, we could spend a whole 10 hours on how flawed the AFL system is and compensation and all of that. I would love it to be. I think we do have to give.
Just wait a sec.
Just to.
No, boys.
Here we go. 2 guests.
We're getting 2 guests here. This is exciting. All the pommies are coming in. I love it.
There you are. Sorry about that, boys.
The things
That's
about
beautiful.
live podcasting, we love to see it. But yeah, I think just with like if it was the third for a fourth, that obviously looks a lot better. And just as soon as you start to give seconds, I start to go, well, I don't love it, but I understand where you're coming from. Like if you can just get the player in, that's all that matters. And a second for a third, it isn't a massive difference. And at the end of the day, we need a Cerra style player. He's perfect for what we need. As you mentioned, we need that creativity, that guy who has that run and dash. He can play on the wing if we need him to. He can play in the guts. Just get it done. And hopefully we can. Just hopefully in the next couple of days. They'll be talking about it, saying his birthday is in a couple of days. So we'll have to wait and see.
I mean, it's a crazy thing because I remember the way I describe this to people, this contracted thing, is when I was in the UK, when the first house I purchased, I was 23. And I remember asking why, when I got the valuation of the house, it was 100K less what he was asking, right?
Yeah.
And because the estate agent said he'd accept this. And I'm like, there's got to be something that he's not telling us about the house or something that's missing. And he's like, oh, he's going through a really messy divorce and he needs to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
So I went back and I remember my father, my grandfather, who was my dad, he told me, offer 25K less, son, because he's desperate for the cash, right? Now, that is what Adam Cerra is. They've got divorced and they need the money. Now, what is happening now is instead of trying to take advantage of that deal, we're actually offering him the full asking price plus 10% because he seems like a good guy and we've all had our heart broken. I feel sorry for you. Go out, treat yourself. Do you know what I mean? No one in the right mind does that because, and this is my issue with the AFL. I think it's too friendly. Like there should be 17 clubs wanting to rip each other off. Like you don't see it in soccer. Like the Gold Coast Collingwood deal. Like someone's got on the phone and Collingwood have gone, look, we've totally bulged our trade and drafts up for the last 2 years. And Gold Coast are like, you know what? We never draft or trade well, so just have our picks. We'll buy Dacos for you. Don't worry about it. That is the AFL, and it needs to have, I think, a bit more cutthroat about it. But until the list managers start being a bit more cutthroat, we're always going to have this, because you hear it all the time, don't you? Carlton have got to be fair. They've got to play nice. And like my argument is you don't have to deal with us, but if your player is requesting to come to us, you have to deal with us, like whether you like us or not. Dodoro does all right, and that guy's a Fruit Loop.
Yeah, that's probably my issue is like, I'm sorry to cut you off there, Lockie. It's the fact that the whole thing is, we have to come to the table and we have to give an appropriate deal. And I think pick 6 is that. It's not like we're offering a 4th rounder or something stupid. It's like, here's pick 6. We might even entertain a later pick swap. And then Freo keep asking. And it's like, you could lose him for nothing. And like this whole thing, I get it. We probably wouldn't get him in the preseason draft if it went that way because other teams are there. But even if that happens, Freo lose him for nothing. So I don't know why we can't just, flex a little bit on Freo. Just, don't let it go to the preseason draft, but be like, it's pick 6, take it. That's it. Because at the end of the day, if Cerra goes to the preseason draft, Freo lose. They lose. They get nothing back. We may get him, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter for me. And you look at, the history of the preseason draft, there's probably only one player that has actually not gone to their desired club, and it was Nick Stevens, but he still said he would come to Carlton. And if Cerra really wants to come to us over, say, a North or a Hawthorn, he refuses a medical. He says, I will refuse to play for you guys. I might even threaten to sit out a year, and no one would touch him. That amount of money on the contract, that amount of years on the contract, and no club would touch him at all. And while I don't think it should get to that stage, and I'm not saying we should make it go to the preseason draft, it's baffling that we have to come to the table and make a fair deal. But then you look at the SPS deal and it looks like West Coast are going, yeah, we'll give you a future 18th rounder and that'll be it for SPS. and that no one's being like, West Coast have to come to the table. Just makes no sense.
The media is crazy because like Matt Rendell did that article and said that Adelaide need to pay overs for Jordan Clark. He's one of the best players in the comp, even though he's requested to go to Adelaide. And then he said that Carlton need to be fair because Cerra's said he wants to go to Carlton, but they've got to be fair because they've got a lot of young talent. They wouldn't want to lose theirs for free. But then when he was gone on SPS, he was like, Carlton have got to be fair about their players and the culture they're providing. SPS wants out. Yeah. So they should really get him there as quickly as possible. And I'm like, well, hang about. Because I'd like to see a bit of NBA here. Like if I was the list manager, I'd be ringing Geelong up and saying, tell you what, we'll give you a future third and our second now. Give us Jordan Clark. And then I'd ring Freo up and say, look, I've just got Jordan Clark. So you've got two options walking forward. We'll keep Jordan Clark. We like him. Classy wingman. We love the kid. Or we'll give you Jordan Clark now and you give us Cerra. Your call.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly where I land with this kind of hypothetical question about this kind of bargaining and negotiation situation. So where does it get to in this negotiation where, let's say the preseason draft thing's off the table and it's either we get him in a trade or not? What level does it have to get to before you go, I would rather not get him than give that up? Like, let's say it was hypothetically our first round pick this year and the first round next year. If we did that deal, would you be disappointed?
I'd be bordering on disappointed if it's two firsts, yeah. If it was a first and a second and nothing coming back, I'd probably feel a little bit sick as well. I'd probably be asking Peter Bell if he can send me over a bottle of wine if he's going to do that to me. But, I mean, it's one of them things because I said this on the Blue Rod show the other night. One thing I also think about is good clubs identify what they want. And if I could have a meeting with Nick Austin and he said to me, look, Pommy, I'm telling you now, Adam Cerra, I've spoke to Vossi, this is the guy. This is the guy that takes us 13th to 6th. And that's why I'm fighting for him. But Pommy, I'm telling you, you back me in this. He's shit hot. He's the man. Yeah, I wouldn't care what we paid for because good clubs don't care about value. Good clubs care about the talent they're getting. And I do think that some of that's got to come into it. It's easy for us to criticize it because me personally, I'd want to rip Freo off. So I'd be like, look, I've stolen John Clark under your nose. See you at PSD or you can have him. Like, we don't even want him. We'll just play him in VFL for banter. Like, and push the boat out. But I blame the AFL because I think the AFL need that rule in place. I think there should be ownership on these clubs to sign talent. And I look at like the SPS deal. I don't mind. I look at the SPS deal and think if I was West Coast and we're Carlton and they've got SPS and they're giving him to us, I wouldn't want to pay more than 36 for him because I'd be like, well, West Coast have fannied him around for 2 years on the back line. Yeah, he was good for a bit, but 2 years he's been meh. And we, in the best moments of his development, they've played him in a different position. So I don't want to risk buying this kid in the hopes we can get him back. Cerra, on the other hand, I understand why they want a bit more money. But then I think about if Cerra was Walsh, I'd be more angry Carlton haven't re-signed him to this stage. I'd be like, why are we at this stage now that this kid's out of contract? Like, what's going on? So I think an owner should be with the club. An owner should be with the club. And I'd like to see the AFL bring a protection for interstate players and say, look, we're going to treat interstate players as restricted free agents. So if they do choose to leave because they're born in a different state, the first 5 years they're protected. And clubs have to force it. But once that 6th year happens, if you haven't signed them, they can just walk to the other club as a delisted free agent. It's your call. Because you see it with Maribor Cho. They've told him they don't want him, but then they've kept him because they know Gold Coast are paying him way too much. And they've suddenly got a second rounder for Maribor Cho. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, it makes no sense. Like, I've got a draft of my manifesto on how to fix the whole system ready to go. There's a whole episode in that. We could honestly chat about it for ages. But I suppose let's jump straight into SPS. Firstly, are you sad to see him go? Is he someone that ideally you would want to be keeping on the list? Or are you happy to get a pick in for him, get a fresh start, and see what else we can maneuver for those draft picks?
I mean, firstly, I love SPS, but he's one of them guys, isn't he, that you just love. It's like Charlie, when he's having a few beers and he's surfboarding down his stairs and breaking his leg. If that was any other player, like Mitch McGovern, I've been harsh on him ever since he's got here. But Charlie does dumb stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, but it's Charlie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mitch, start running. Why aren't you running, Mitch? But SPS is that guy. You want him to do well. He plays football in a way that makes me happy because he's smiling. He looks like he's loving it. But the last year, I don't know what T did to him. He looked like he hated life. And I've said it a few times on Blue Abroad. He looks like he hates life. And it made me sad because I never understand how he went from the Western Bulldogs game and then we never saw him in the midfield again. Like the one time he showed something, it was like someone was like, oh, well, he's done it now. Let's move him down to the back line and ruin his career. But it's one of them things. I mean, I'm sad he's going. Because I think part of me, and I hate doing this because it makes me sound like a hypocrite. I kind of get attached to these players. And even though I don't show it on my stuff, I do like these guys, even though I'm harsh to them at times. I always had this nice dream that the guys we had now, they'd take us to a flag and we could look at our first round picks and say, God, we did it, boys. We did it. So it's going to be sad because as soon as SPS signs, I'll hate the guy and he'll be back to being a Mel and whatever else I'll call him in the next couple of years. But I love the guy, but I wish him well. As a Carlton fan now, I hope he does well. And I hope to an extent it bites us in the arse. Nothing I'd love more to come against him and we see Adam Cerra versus SPS, grand final day, head to head. I'd love to see that. So I wish him well. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't feel how we can ask for a lot because there's so much risk attached to that deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So many good points there, Pom. And I agree. Like, I find it so hard to give up any player as well. Like, it just leaves a sour taste. And I'm the same as you. Like, I have that image of like all these guys that have been part of this rebuild to be the ones that are standing on that podium. But like, I also know that there's not every single one of them is going to, like, that just never happens. Not every single player through this rebuild is going to be there. And some of the other guys like Dow obviously have ahead of him. O'Brien is someone that I still see is probably having more potential in how it currently sits. And I'm also just kind of, there was the talk of, oh, Voss is going to try and convince him to stay. I'm not a massive advocate for that. I think that it's been soured with what's happened over the last couple of years. And so the fact that it's happening now, I think it's fine. And yeah, with our lack of leverage, I think, almost have to take what we'll get. But I know there'll be some disappointed fans regardless of what we get. Even if we get it first back, I reckon some people complain.
I think with Cerra as well, Cerra and Hewett, I've got more chance of playing in that midfield now than SPS if he stays. So, I mean, let's be honest. Like, there's no way he'd be in the top 7 midfielders. So
that's it.
If we can acquire some talent, and it's all going to come down to the pick, isn't it? Like, if Carlton, let's say, like, the way I see it is if Carlton get a pick and that becomes Lewis Young, effectively Cerra becomes Lewis Young and SPS and 6 for Young and Cerra, which when you look at it that way, that's a huge dub. That's a huge dub, I think.
Yeah, and like it's something I've spoken about for the past couple of years is we have so many of these question mark plays is what I like to call them. It's these young guys that you don't know their best position. Are they in the best 22? Are they going to be superstars? And none of them have seemingly taken that next step. There's still so many of them in this crop. And unfortunately, it looks like he's another one of these ones and we're going to lose one of those. But I think if there's enough players that we have that is kind of in that similar mold, it's not a massive loss. The disappointing thing will be that we've obviously invested a lot in him, time, the draft pick, and we might only get a pick 52 back, which is disappointing. Like if it's 35, you're buzzing. That's beautiful. 52, it just doesn't look good. And it's just sad, really.
I'll be heartbroken if it's 52. I mean, like I had 36 as my valuation, which was quite funny because when I put it on Blue Abroad, people went mental. But now it's 50. They're like, bring Pom's 36 back. Because like I said, the way I would negotiate, and I kind of predicted it, I would be wanting their pick in the 20s. That would be my starting point. We want that. Now, they're probably wanting the 50s. And then you meet in the middle, don't you, 36. And like the one I've suggested today, we take their 28, give them pick 61, evens it out in the draft calculator. and they get a late pick because they love their WA talent. There's a few young kids out there that will be around them later picks that they always have a sniff at. Helps them out. They move on with their lives. It looks like Jared Brander's going to St Kilda, so they're robbing someone else. Evidently, the list manager at West Coast is related to Ned Kelly, but at least Ned Kelly had the decency to wear a mask. So they're winning that way anyway. So if we can get something like that, I'll be happy.
Yeah. We had a comment on Twitter from Jabba who he's kind of reasoning. His level of things is pick 6 for Cerra is enough, and then pick 20 for SPS, which I just don't see a world where something that high would happen at this stage. It's so hard as well. Like we spoke about how connected we get to these players, and then it's just so hard to get past the fact of how high he got picked in that draft, and that when that happened, we look at him and go, okay, well. He's in that premiership team in 5 years or whenever it is. So getting past that fact of where he's drafted makes it hard as well. But obviously that'll be part of the bargaining as well for the Blues.
He's got a lot going against him, Cerra, because I think only one player has ever left who's been taken in the top 10 and made a career of himself at his second club. And he's also the cursed pick 6.
Oh, no, don't do this to me, Pom.
The deadly pick, isn't he? It's the deadly pick. Pick 6 is SPS, which is the pick that, for some reason in AFL history, no one ever makes it. It's the cursed picks. I mean, it's one of them things that you've got to look at. Like pick 6 is the only one in the top 10 that averages less than 100 games played for the club. It averages 64, which is the equivalent of pick 21. So it is a cursed pick. So we're lucky in that avenue that he's got it stacked against him, that if we get rid of him, we've probably dodged a bullet. And we have got pick 6 this year in the draft. So we're dodging the bullet, which is a good thing. And Adam Cerra, I can pleased to tell you, he comes from the third most games played in his pick at 133. So you'd take that. Chances fate is saying Cerra is brilliant for Carlton.
I like it.
So I guess on that, we've brought in Hewett, we bring in Cerra. What does your, midfield mix look like? Because now we've finally started to get a bit of depth. Before it was Walsh, it was Cripps, Kennedy, Curnow, Dow. There really wasn't much else running through there. To put you on the spot, what would your ideal midfield mix look like?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that turns me on about what we've got at the moment is last year we averaged 6 rotations in a game, which was one of the least in the AFL on the ball. When you look at Melbourne, they're 9, and they really float them numbers. They've got so many things they can do. They can do Neil Bullen and Viney to slow down the game. So if runs get on and they start getting beaten around the ball, they can slow it down, scrap it out. Carlton had one mode, which was basically get ball, kick it. And hope to Christ Harry marks it. There was no real methodology. Where I'm excited this year that the top teams seem to rotate on the wing and halfback. So now you've got Zach Williams, you've got Jack Martin who can float through there, Paddy Dow, and then we've got Cerra, Walsh, Cripps, Kennedy. You've got Hewett. You've got a real good makeup. So for me, starting bounce round 1, I'd like to see Walsh, Cripps, Hewett, Dow, and Kennedy on the pine, and being like, well, you know what? If the shit hits the fan, Hewett's there at the moment, but we can move Walsh to the wing. Kennedy comes on the pine, and if they kick 2 goals in a row, well, you ain't getting the ball out anymore because Kennedy and Hewett are going to smother everything, make you waste energy, and then we'll bring our young kids back again and we'll hurt you that way. So I'm excited about that because that's what Port do. It's what Melbourne do. We've got a really good makeup now. It's sexy football.
Yeah. Michael Ceravolo on Twitter asked a similar question. And you mentioned a few of them. He asked about Ed Curnow as well. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, I think half forward is kind of, I think that'll become more his element this year. I don't really see with these guys a whole lot of midfield time for him, even though I thought he still did have a nice season. But that mix that you said, I like.
Well, I mean, worst tackling side in forward 50, like worst tackling side in forward 50 Carlton are. And one thing that impresses me about Ed is he does tackle. Like, you've got to give that to him. That is his forte. We were 17th last year in tackles. Rebounds against, it was something absolutely appalling as well. Like, it was so easy to get out of Carlton's back half. It was It was like the French during the war. People just penetrated our line of defence incredibly easy. So it's one of them worries for me looking at Carlton that is an area we've got to look at. And I like Ed Kerner because I thought Ed Kerner, his last 2 games in the forward line, we know this is something that Bolton wanted to do and people condemned him for it. And we didn't really have the talent on the ball to afford it. But I thought the last 2 games, Ed, whatever he sees, he tackles. And if you've got him and Jesus in that forward line, not much is getting past them. And I like that as well. So I think that's a really big thing for us that we can use Ed Kerner as kind of a tagging half forward. You look at Geary did it against Doc. Do you remember? I remember my wife going, "Oh, Geary's going to towel Doc up. She's a big St Kilda girl," and I'm like, Geary doesn't even know what the forward half is, babe. And he absolutely battered Doc, to be fair. And all the teams now are doing that. You look at all the top teams, halfback is a strong position for him. So having that option for Carlton to stifle your backline, your transition, that excites me as well. So I think Ed Kerner, for me, he's going to live in the forward line, and I'm excited about that.
And look, if anything, if you want to get super optimistic, he's dribbling goals from the boundary. He's kicking 4 goals a game. He's going to be electric for us. He knows where the goals are. So at least it's not like he's never played down there before as well. He can kick a snag.
When that last game where he kicked 4 goals, do you remember Space Jam, the first one, where there was the ball and if you touched it, you lost your power? I wonder if Ed Kerner stolen that and made Eddie Betts touch it, because he turned into Eddie Betts, didn't he? Like, I've never seen Ed Kerner that good.
There's something in that.
No, I like it.
Yeah, I think he's maybe stolen his powers.
We could do with that. I tell you what. Okay, the last couple of positions, we'll try and get through these a bit quick, because we haven't really targeted them, as it would seem at this stage. Probably the 2 that I thought were some of the biggest things we were needing were, I guess, ruck depth and maybe a young adds to that a little bit. But I was hoping we would target like a veteran ruckman to teach TDK and allow, Pitt as well to learn off him, because he still hasn't, he's I think 25, but he hasn't played that many games of football, but doesn't look like we're targeting that. So was that a position you wanted us to look at? And is there anyone still out there that you'd hope we'd throw something at?
It was probably a position that was a concern. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I look at, though, is the first 6 rounds before Pitternet went down, he was top 3 in the league in hitouts.
Yeah.
His issue was he was bottom 3 hitouts to advantage. And if you go back to them 6 games, though, that's not Pitternet's fault. That is our midfield has no idea what it's doing around the ball. Like, they're static and they are set up to not concede. That was David Teague's mantra. If you look back at it tactically, it's like Manchester United at the moment in the UK. They're setting up not to lose first, and then winning's the second option. And that's stuffed Carlton. But you've got to remember, this guy was winning in hitouts, top 3 in the comp, and his midfield just couldn't get the ball. So I think Pitternet has shown something. If he has good structure around the ball, them hitouts to advantage start hitting their target 20% more. Well, he's better than most straight away. Because the hard thing is getting the hit out. The hitouts to advantage should come with the midfield. You look at Max Gorn, his midfield works so hard to win them taps. So I think that's one thing, but you have to find the right ruckman. I don't want us to go out and buy anyone. Now, maybe if there's an option, I'll throw this one out and see what you boys think. Rory Lobb. I suggested that today on a video that they want to get rid of the salary because they feel Darcy's taken over the ruck role. But they're looking for a forward. We've got Mitch McGovern. Again, high value. If you could maybe get a swap for Mitch McGovern, I'd be happy to pay him the same salary that Mitch is on, because they're on the same salary, because at least we've got a ruck forward where Mitch can't play ruck. So we don't need another forward. We could play TDK then and Rory Lobb, and both of them can hit out in the ruck and slot across the forward line. So that might be an option for Carlton. I'd have a sniff at.
I don't mind it at all. I mean, this is the part that I'm struggling with and that we talk about so much. Like, let's say that we don't bring in anyone else, like just putting like Lobb aside for a second. Where do you see our best football being next year? Is it with TDK and someone else doing the majority of the ruck? Or do you think that is he ready next year to do it himself and then have Jesus as the backup ruck? Because when we were rolling with that, I was frothing it. And I was like, do this and then have Mackay and Charlie up forward and you're good. We don't need to worry about Pitt. Don't need to worry about anyone else. But what do you reckon?
I think Jesus, though, was really good. When you look at what Jesus did, is he tackled. So he literally stood just to take part in the ruck. But as soon as the ball hit the deck, he did what the midfielders should have been doing, and that's getting over the ball and making it a bit hard, where our midfielders were kind of like, oh, my God, we better get in position, and I don't want anyone to break our lines. And it's quite simple on the ball. See ball, hit ball, game over. And that's what Jesus does. So I think if I was the coach, I'd look, what are Melbourne doing? What are Dogs doing? They're playing two ruckmen, and they're rotating them over the forward line, and it's working a treat. So TDK's got similar aspects to his game to Luke Jackson. Play Pitternet and TDK. It works. Pitternet can run behind the ball when he's resting, intercept marking. He's been done well forward as well. So does TDK. Both of them have got good forward craft. We forget that because under Teague's system, they didn't know where to go. And sometimes Pitternet just lived in the forward line and happened to take a mark. And we found out he's pretty good at it. So I don't mind that. Lob aside, I'm quite happy. Murkoff learning his trade in the VFL. The guy's 210 centimetres. Yeah. And he's a volleyballer. We've never heard volleyballers. We know basketballers are good. Maybe volleyball's the next thing. So I like them too. Volleyball.
Yeah, and with TDK, it's like he was a junior forward. He played most of his football as a forward. So I think you can rest him there while he maybe isn't 100% ready. If you end up making Pitt be more of the number one, at least for another year, I don't think it's horrendous. But I think, I just worry that there's just no one else. But I think if you're able to do that McGovern lob trade, I think that's a win for both teams. He comes in as a forward ruck. That's perfect. That's the Levi Casbolt replacement that's better. And his salary's big, but we get rid of Mitch McGovern's salary. So, I think that's a massive win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win as well, because like you say, same salary. So if I was Freo, I'd rather pay $700K for Mitch McGovern because Darcy's nailed the ruck. And they've got Meek and they've got some other players that can help out should there be an injury. I agree with you. My issue with Carlton is if Pitternet or TDK go down, Murkoff's nowhere near ready. We need to end that experiment because he's played 2 VFL games. So do you know what I mean? And I didn't know I didn't even know volleyball was a professional sport. I thought that was something you do as a hangover cure in Ibiza when you're 21. I didn't actually know that was a real sport until we signed him. So I agree we need that third option. In an ideal world, it would be someone like Todd Goldstein in the mode of Stephen Martin. I don't think that's available to us, though. So I don't mind the Rory lob because he's got a different facet to his game. Yeah. He's got something that we could use if he's not a ruckman. So what Carlton do, I don't know. But if they got that deal across, I'd be quite happy with it.
I like it. Last position would be, I guess, a small lockdown defender. It's something that everyone loves to take their pot shots at Lockie Plowman and say that, he's not the right person to play down there. We've been playing Stocker in that role a little bit. We've got Kemp that I think is a bit more of that interceptor, but can he maybe play a bit smaller because he's so good below his knees and he can run? Where do you see that being a position? Do you see it as a position of concern? Do you think it's a trade? Do you think it's a draft? Where are you looking at the small lockdown defender?
Just feel like we've got 1,000 defenders at Carlton Football Club that aren't keys because we've spent 2 years converting every midfielder we've ever recruited into a small defender. With the Plowman thing, Plowman is that wonderful position in the AFL that if not everything goes right, it's him. And he's a bit like the Mario Balotelli of the back line. If everything else goes wrong, it's him. It's his fault. But I actually went through his games for my end of season review. And you look, a lot of his mistakes are through missed tackles in the midfield. I'd love to get Lockie Plowman. And I said this if I was the coach. My first day on the job would be, Lockie Plowman, why does that chubby Pom on Blue Abroad say you're shit? And I would go through the games I've criticised him and say, well, why did that happen? I was like, I guarantee if he was honest, he'd be like, it's because Cripps half-assed a tackle, which then gave me 3-on-1 down the back. Wheatering was covered, Jones was covered, and I was exposed to 2 players. And what do you want me to do? And I was like, I reckon all of his mistakes stem from the inability to put midfield and forward pressure, which we rank bottom 2 for in the AFL. Our midfield defence numbers are amazing. But them midfield and forward numbers, honestly, they might as well not be there in some games. Like the Port game, the midfield, literally, the stats actually say that we didn't have a midfield, which is phenomenal, considering that there was about $6 million worth of talent on the show. So for me, Plowman, I think he's got the role, because I think every bad game he has, you've got to remember the Papley game. You've got to remember the Charlie Cameron game. You've got to remember the Michael Walters game, which at the time, Michael Walters was like 4 goals a game. And I remember seeing Walters on Plowman on the team sheet and me going, oh my God. Why do I do this to myself? But he pulled it out. So I actually think with Plowman, I think that role maybe is a Stocker, is maybe a Kemp. I'd like to see Kemp in that role, and we play an interceptor there, and we back Sard and we back Stocker to be first to the ball when it hits the deck. But I think Plowman, he's not exciting, but he does what he says on the tin. And I think you'll be surprised this year when Voss brings this powerful tackle brand he's talked about. I reckon you'll suddenly see no more Pooman moments, as some people call it in the chat on Blue Abroad. They make me giggle with it, Lockie Pooman. I don't think you'll see many Pooman moments, and you'll get Mr. Plow moments.
Yeah, I love it. I totally agree. I think we're both pretty positive on Plow on our show, and I agree with what you're saying. I think apart from the few awful skill errors that he makes from time to time, as everybody does, Stocker kicked a behind this year, straight through the behinds. We need to all remember that. I agree. But then I guess that's the kind of the next step is Plowman's been pretty healthy since he's been a Blue. And so if he does go down and say that Stocker is going to be a midfielder this year, is it then who else can even do it? I just don't. It's just a bit of a worry, I guess. Like you said, it's where's the next line of like who's the next key tall? This Plowman role just seems to be something that we're kind of missing if he was to go down. But I'm not looking to replace him this year.
I mean, Parksy, if they keep him on, I mean, that is his job. That is his niche. And I think he'll be very stiff, Parksy, if he doesn't get another role, because I thought he showed a lot of intent. And that's what you're looking for in that lockdown role. He stayed with his man, and his man was accountable. And that's all you're asking for your third tall. Make the guy accountable. Don't give him freebies. In defense of Plowman, though, David Teague's pressure would turn mud into diamond. That's how much pressure these boys were in down back. Like, you look at Lockie Plowman, and I keep saying this to people. I used to play striker at soccer, so I had the lovely position of not having to defend. If I had to pass the halfway line, I was having a go at the midfield because I was like, what are you doing? But I can tell you, when a defender is under pressure and the ball's coming in all the time, it's amazing how a good defender makes mistakes. Just by me being there, they start to think, oh my God, it's happening again. The ball's coming back. I'm tired of this. And I felt sorry for Plowman because he gets the ball a lot down the back. And look at the movement ahead of him. Some of them kicks in the Port game, he got panned by people. And I actually felt sorry for Plowman because the midfield stopped moving towards him. They were all moving away from him, which was David Teague's mantra. His run home to mum status was boot ball really far, please. And what was Plowman meant to do? Like, honestly, I reckon it's amazing that Luke Sayers in the review said the game plan was confusing. No shit. Like I had no idea what they were doing. Neither did the players. I'm pretty sure David Teague half the time as well was like,
That's why all he said was, let's just play our way, because he had no idea what it was. He was just throwing out buzzwords to hopefully
I
cover it.
can't wait to 2051 and he releases David Teague, My Way, and it's just a fucking empty book. Because, I mean, you've got to remember as well, when we talk about pressure, what I love is you watch Richmond, and Richmond, their training intensity is something I've never seen before. I've had the luxury of going to a behind closed doors session at Punt Road. Their intensity is insane. And you know what happens when Richmond are in shit, they get their book in their mind and they're like, right, we're in the shit. What do we do? And they mentally turn to page 8, which is in the shit. And it's a bullet point system. And it's like, trust yourself, do the simple things, keep the ball, keep moving, and all these things. And they know that they're like, all right, if we do that, we get out of trouble. When Carlton turned to that book mentally, someone's drawn a willy on there. That's what's in our book at the moment, right? And I feel sorry for the boys because you've got to remember these guys since 2016, all that's ever happened under pressure is they've got battered. They've got battered.
Yep.
And that's what I'm hoping Voss brings in and says, it's a collective responsibility when we're under pressure. The forwards need to tackle more to give the defenders a breather. If the forwards miss, you midfielders have got to hit someone. You've got to slow it down. And that is the problem with Carlton. We rely too much in the last 2 years, particularly because Wheaterin's like the son of God and Jones has suddenly become elite, that we're relying on these two so much. And we shouldn't have to. Like, Wheaterin should be, when he takes these marks and Jones takes these aerials, that should be the icing on the cake, like when Darcy Moore does. At the moment, these kids need to do it every time we have an entry. And it should be a luxury to us, not a necessity. And that is what I'm hoping you'll see Plowman be better. Once that pressure comes, he's not going to have the ball pinged on his head by a 6'8" monster anymore. He's going to actually be on his man and accountable for one person.
Yeah, look, we're pretty pro Plowman on this podcast, and I think that's the thing. You can see his good games, and they're there. If you didn't have those, I'd be disappointed. And his biggest criticism is, he gets beaten one-on-one. Whenever he's isolated, gets beaten. And I think most defenders would get beaten one-on-one. Like, not many are that good at constantly winning it. As you mentioned, your Jones and Wiederings are some of the elite at that, and they make anyone else in our team that can't do that look like an idiot. And when there's that much space created in front for these forwards to run into, I mean, what hope does he have half the time to even try to lay a block or to stop or impede them at all? And hopefully, if we, as you mentioned, if we can get these systems right and get other players working, as much as I'd love to bring in the next gun in there to solidify this position, we don't have the draft picks for it to get a deal. I don't know if the player's even available out there. And if we can have a Plowman, a Stocker, a Kemp, can you get Newman to play a bit more lockdown at times? I think there's enough talent there that for the next 1 to 2 years, we can hopefully just deal with that and try to improve elsewhere.
Well, yeah, we've got the pick next year as well, the first. So, I mean, that can be something that could be targeted. I mean, Rhett Bazo, again, could be that guy that they look at as the stopgap, the third tall, play him there. I mean, like, the way I look at it is I always think the structure is so important in today's game. And I remember the Port game, and the biggest compliment I can give anyone is the Port game, because I talked all year when we did the tactical debriefing I used to do before every game of how you beat a side. I talk about isolation, isolating their fullback with your full forward. That's what you want to do. We can isolate Harry. He can beat anyone. I was so impressed with Ken Hinckley because David Teague's defensive system was so amazing that for the first time in my life, I saw them isolate 3 forwards on Wheaterin. I didn't even know that was possible, that you could have 3 of your players and one of theirs so regularly. Like, amazing work. So that's the kind of shit Plowman had to deal with. Like, honestly, like, Plowman at times, like a lot of the backline, David Teague sent them out to war and forgot to give them ammunition and then was screaming at them saying, shoot back. Like, it's hard. So I'm hoping you'll see Plowman, because I think Plowman, when we're playing well, that's where Plowman plays well. When he's only got to do what he's meant to do, that's good. But when Plowman's expected to guard Buddy Franklin, like, it's like, it would be like me getting angry at my son when we play in the backyard and I batter him and going, why can't you be good? Like, I'm 80 kgs heavier than him and massive compared to him. So it's horses for courses, isn't it?
Did we play Port Adelaide this year? I have absolutely stricken that from everything in my memory. So I don't actually remember what you're talking about.
I was live for that game. That was honestly, outside of witnessing childbirth, probably one of the worst moments of my life. Like, honestly, that was horrific. I'd rather watch Frozen. My daughter for 2 years watched Frozen on repeat. I don't know what was going on, but I'd rather watch Frozen again, and that is the worst movie of all time. Fact.
Yeah, well, look, I think that's probably going to wrap up the chat about the players coming in, but there has been a lot of movement in the coaching ranks. Obviously, I'm not going to bother asking you about David Teague. I think we all know we've moved on from that chapter. We've got big Vossi Bop in now, and everything's moving quite nicely. But the big thing that's happened is the assistant coaches. we've brought in, and it looks like we've finalized things now. Are you happy with the guys that we've brought in, Pommy?
Well, I mean, first one is Tim Clark, and I'm excited about Tim Clark. Now, people are saying, I know a lot of people have gone off on it, but I think if you look at his resume, 2010 to 2013 Richmond Development Officer, 2013 to 2015, he wrote their development program for their next stage of the rebuild and was the head coach. He came to us, midfield and development. Interesting. Carlton ranked 11th, 9th, and 10th in defensive pressure and tackles in the midfield in a year that we were absolutely a bit Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
We were 16th and 17th in Teague's generation after it. So let that sink in. That 2018, 10th. 13th this year, 17th.
Interesting.
It's poor. And last year, 2018 to 2021, Gold Coast forwards, and he wrote the training program. And in 2018, this training program released to their members had to have an emphasis on forward structure, youth and development to subsidize our lack of senior bodies. And this year as well, he offered to work for free as the runner as well. So not only was he doing their development program and forward coach on game day to save on the soft cap, he was a runner. So everywhere he's gone, he's got a huge rap. Look at some of the names he's worked with. Kane Lambert, Camden McIntosh, Dustin Martin. He wrote his midfield training program. Ben King, Isaac Rankine, Tuck Miller. Like, if we can get some of our players there from him, exciting. And Cripper, Tim Clark babysat Cripper, and Cripper was pretty good 2018 and 2019, wasn't he? So,
he was all right.
Pretty good. And then we've got Hamill. I like Hamill. Again, another guy that was a development coach for St Kilda, worked with their backline and their forwards. That excites me because, again, D word, development. And then Hansen, who's the tactical genius, wrote their offensive structure. That is his job at West Coast and Western Bulldogs. Their offensive lines and systems. And how good is the Doggies' systems this year? It's been huge since he took it over at the start of the year. They've played finals. One of the most potent sides at defending against rebound 50s. And again, worked in a bit of development. So what has impressed me in short about that is the D word is our naughty word at Carlton. Development doesn't happen. In my opinion, outside of a few players, no one's got better. Like, I was saying this to Terry the other day on Blue Abroad. Look at SPS when he got drafted to now. Even though he's had Mickey Mouse coaches, has he got better? Like, do you look at him and say, third, fourth year player, that? And I was like, but why is that? And I was like, a development coach is going to push them. And I don't think these boys have been pushed ever. And I think we're lucky that we've got Wheater in. We've got Joe. We've got Mackay. We've got players like Walsh who are self-motivated. These guys don't want to fail. You know, Walsh was that annoying kid that was throwing chewing gum at your mate. And then the teacher was like, "Oi, Sam, what did I say?" And he rattles off what he said and then hands in his homework and got an A star. And you're like, piss off, mate. Like, he's that kid who's just a winner. So I'm excited that they've handled the development. We've got one more coach to get. If we can get, I know people don't like it, Brendan McCartney, because he's old school, but again, he's like a choco. He comes from a Yester era who the game's gone past him in a tactical sense to teach, but he knows the game, so he can be a tactical genius. A lot of people that work with him at Ballarat say this guy sees the game better than anyone else. It's his ability to translate it to a younger person. Well, you've got Voss, who's worked with kids. You've got all them players. So all Brendan's got to do is look at the game and say, look, we need to do X, Y, Z. Tell Walshy. And I'm excited. I think this is the first time I look at the back room and go, yeah, these guys know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, before John Barker, I reckon, just told real cracking jokes at Christmas parties. Do you know what I mean?
You had to do something to be there that long.
Yeah, no, I mean, Cam Bruce, do you know what I mean? Having a laugh. And his line was in disarray, man. Like, he's laughing at his troops being shit. Like, I would have been ashamed to look at my boss if they were my boys. I couldn't look him in the eyes. I would have told him a joke and gone, I've just got your sack, mate. How good's that? I've got 2 first names. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, look, anyone better than having like Brent Stanton in the midfield, I'm pretty happy with that as well. It was an interesting thing when I was looking at it because it's like knowing about assistant coaches, I think, is one of the hardest things to try to investigate because there's not a lot of information out there. And look, I'm not there in the change rooms at every single club. I don't know exactly what goes on, but I was trying to look at their resumes, like he was sort of rattling off there, and every single one of them started as a development coach. All of them coached their standalone VFL side as well. So they have experience actually knowing how they have to communicate to the whole team and how the whole squad works, not just their line. And then you mentioned that, two of them have written the training programs, the development programs, and having Hansen there being the offensive systems, he's written that. It's incredible, the resume that we've clearly looked at. We've had this review, and obviously the big thing was development, and we now know the boxes that we need the people coming in that have to tick, and it looks like that's what we've gone out to do. And the funny thing, with Clark obviously being at Carlton during our bad years, it doesn't always look good, and you go, who the hell is Tim Clark? I have no idea who that is. I get the criticism, but as you say, if he can get Cripper back to how Cripper was playing when he was there, I think that's incredible. And to touch on, I guess, Hansen lastly, we needed that tactical guy. I wasn't sure who it was going to be. And for us to get him out of the doggies is massive. And Geelong were after him to be their senior assistant. I think it's one of the biggest wins for him to go away from two teams that are competing at the end of September, at the pointy end of finals. And for him to go, I think Carlton have got something here. That speaks volumes for me on hopefully what Vossi and this whole team are doing. And if Brian Cook likes all of this, I'm happy as well.
Well, I think you've got Brian Cook there, you've got Hansen, and you've got Voss. All three guys have been part of a side that has played finals this decade. Do you know what I mean? Not just this decade, but 6 weeks ago. So it's fresh. They're already coming from a situation where, you know what, this is how things are done. This is how we're doing it. And I'm loving to hear standards. And what I love as well, when you hear about some of these, Hamill, he believes in old school mantras of hard work and dedication. Music to my ears, because I'm sure our players are dedicated, but I don't believe they're dedicated enough. And to be a champion, it's okay being dedicated, but to be a champion, it's a life sacrifice. And what's excited me is already I'm not seeing Instagrams of these boys down the beach. I'm not seeing Instagrams of them having beers. Now, they might be, and I've always said this. If you're a professional sportsman, create a burner account with your mates on Instagram. Don't add me as a paying member showing you doing lines and stuff like that. I don't want to see it. I just want to think in my mind you're on the treadmill 24 hours a day. And I'm enjoying the fact I'm seeing them all in October, going for a run, playing football, eating healthy. Stocker released a blooming salad. I love that because that says to me that you are focused. Because right now, what Voss said, it's been unacceptable. He's right. It's been unacceptable. These boys now need to put some hard work in. And I'm excited because I tell you now, if they're listening to this podcast, you guys want to be a superstar, we've got the shortcut. Because you're part of that 22 on grand final day when we finally win a flag. You're suddenly in the diesel category. You're in the Cooter category. People will remember you for the rest of your life. All you've got to do is be fit game day. And we won't remember you. We will reward you with a lifetime of stories. So this is a great privileged position for some of these players to be in. And I think now we've finally got the systems in place that we can actually go from being the laughing stock to being the main man of this competition. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So good luck to the boys. I'm excited.
Gee whiz. I hope Voss is listening so we could clip that little section, fucking play it for the fellas before they run out round one, because that is inspirational. And that's got me even more excited. So now the lids are completely off. I'm ready for the season to start. I love every single assistant coach. I didn't know a word about Tim Clark before that. And I love them all now. I'm in. Sign me up.
What I love about Tim Clark as well is he looks like, your temporary PE teacher. He does. Like, he looks like, when your PE teacher gets married or gets hurt and has to go away and they find one from somewhere. And he's always really cool. He's like, what do you do, boys? And you're like, oh, we just play football. He's like, all right, cool, let's go do that. and it was really the bleep test. He looks like that cool guy. So I think he'll fit in with the group. And I think what's exciting is it's a bit like, the big brother coming home from the army, isn't it? He's gone and left them when they were babies. He's now coming back when they're men. So they're going to remember this is the guy that got me to where I am. And he's now going to be in that wonderful position where he's going to see them to manhood when they win a flag. So I like that. I do. That does excite me because Voss is going to get the 2-1-0 on these players and go, I know them when they were kids. This is what they need to do. This is what they need pushing on.
Yeah, and I think that just every different appointment that we've made since we've sort of started this reset, whatever you want to call it, every single appointment has made sense and has seemed to fit a need. You look at Vossi, the coach, and we needed this leadership, but we need someone that can communicate and take this club forward. And you're looking at all the assistants and they're ticking all the boxes. Brian Cook ticks the boxes. I understand why people are negative on things because of how the past has been and we've never got it right and we've changed things before. But I just don't know how you can look at this and not think they are clearly trying to fix things and it looks like it will turn. And obviously the proof's going to be in the pudding and who knows, it might not work. But how can you not look at this and think that they are doing everything right now to get us going in the right direction? We're bringing in some past players, not just for the sake of it, but to try and bring back the spirit of Carlton and show these guys what the history of this football club is like. And we're driving standards and the way where the club's communicating with the fans is different. Every single thing that is happening feels different. And I just don't know how you can't at least buy into that and be positive at all.
Well, if you have your heart broken and you treat every girl or boy you meet after that moment that they're going to break your heart, you're going to spend the rest of your life a very lonely person. So my mantra is always, I look for the best in everyone until they prove me wrong. So there is nothing wrong with getting on the bandwagon, getting on the votes, the Voss votes wagon, the Vossi bot, whatever people are going to call it now on. And, round 4, we're 0-4. You can bet your ass to a barn dance that fan cams Pom will blow his lid like he always does. But I see it really counterproductive. There is so much negativity out there. And I see it so counterproductive because if this is really what it's happening, it's an exciting atmosphere at Icon Park. And if we're led to believe what the media are saying, that the players are amped, Vossi's contacted them all, he's laid the ground rules down. We're just killing their buzz, man. They need us more than we need them. Do you know what I mean? And I mean that with all in sincerity. There is 1,000 sports teams out there. You can get passionate about another one. But they need us. They need us round 1 to be there in force. And if you can't be there, screaming the name at home, they feel that energy. I know a lot of the footballers have reached out to me and seen the YouTube stuff. So that every little comment you make might be in the eyes of a Zach Fisher. Paddy Dow might check his Facebook and suddenly see a comment from one of you saying, go Paddy, today's the day. And that might be the moment in his head. He was like, you know what? Big Tom from Werribee said that it's my day. He's right. It is my fucking day. So I feel it's a duty as a fan to always push the positive, but be real. Be real. And it is an exciting time because I can't remember a time we've sacked a coach and we've actually given the new coach a new clean slate. Because usually it's like, you're right, Bolts. How you doing, mate? Yeah. Look, you can sack anyone. And he's like, all right, cool. Get rid of Barker. Barker's mum actually brings in the sandwiches and it would break her heart if we got rid of him. So you can't get rid of Barker. All right, I want to get rid of this. No, not him either. Not him either because he's actually mates with Cripps' dad. All right, who can I get rid of? No one? Usually that's what happens. It's great that we've pulled the Band-Aid off. There's no Teague.
Agree.
There's no Bolton. There's no Mick Malthouse. There is nothing. It is now. Michael Voss has gone in and he's got Luke Power as the exception who he's played with and he knows well. Yeah. He's got Power. He knows him. And then all the rest are new Vossites. And that's what a good leader does. You don't want, trust me, my department at work, I've taken over from someone and I've got 3 people that used to be there and they're not there anymore. But all I used to hear is, never used to happen like that when he was there. And I used to always be there guess where you're not, Toto, anymore. You're not in fucking Kansas. You're in Pomland now. Enjoy your stay. And it is annoying because people always refer to what was. And if the old boss let them get away with mediocrity and the new guy comes in and says, no, that's not how it works anymore. This is how we do things. If there's a guy with that mindset of, oh, but the old guy used to let us have a smoke at halftime. Like, you're always going to have that shit standard. So I'm excited because I guarantee you now, last 2 years, standard of football has basically been, well done, you turned up on time. That's phenomenal. Fantastic. Where Voss is, you're 10 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late in my book.
Yeah.
And that excites me now because there's no one of that old regime. The new regime, this is the new standard. Cripps hasn't got anywhere to hide anymore. Dow hasn't got anywhere to hide. These are new leaders, and he's going to have to live by their mantra. So I'm excited by that.
And I like that the rhetoric has seemed to be, it's not just, oh, we're excited to get into preseason and get to work. It's been, this is going to be hard work. This is going to be tough. We know what it takes. And like, that is just a complete different mindset. And I think that's 100% buying into it all. That's where I am. Lockie, do you have any of the fan questions for us to get through? I know we've been going for a little bit here, but we'll try and speed through these if you've got any for me.
It's my fault. Everyone knows Pom likes it.
Well, that's the thing. We did such a brilliant job of, well, I'll say I did such a brilliant job of weaving them through that we've pretty much ticked off most of them. But I'll ask these two names that didn't come up. Pete Fergo mentioned Laddams, which is a name that's been a bit of a buzz. And then Blue Dave has mentioned, what about going after Segler? Pom, do either of those names excite you at all? Do you see any kind of potential now with them?
Laddams certainly does, because I think, I mean, Laddams was the famous ruck who we played a couple of years ago that on Blue Abroad, I said Laddams was a complete Mickey Mouse footballer and Carlton will smash him, and he turned into Brodie Grundy after a quarter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can put Laddams on the field with Pitternet, we know he turns into a superhuman. But I do think Laddams has proven to me over the last season that he could be the first choice ruckman of any side, and that's why he wants to leave. And Lysette is the same type of footballer, second fiddle, left a flag-winning side, went to Port and has now cemented it. I do like Laddams. Segler, I think he's got potential, but I'd rather have Laddams if it was the choice. So I do like Laddams, and by the sounds of it, St Kilda are taking the mick because they're trying to have as many ruck forwards as we've got halfbacks, which is a weird thing. Like, we should trade in one of our halfbacks for a ruck.
Yeah, I love Laddams myself. It's just, I just don't think we can get the deal done. And when they're coming out saying, so we don't want him, we're going to force him out of the club, but give us like 17 first rounders, please, because that's what we're after. It just makes no sense. And we don't have that capital. It's too late probably now in the trade for us to try to get more second rounders to get a first. I just don't see it happening. And I don't know what the salary cap is like, whether we can bring him in. And I think we all sort of see TDK as being that future. And if he's wanting to be the first nailed on guy, I don't know if we can guarantee him that either. As far as Segler, I think he's 30, so he's more that veteran maybe that I'm after. But is he leaving to get a lot more game time? I'm sort of looking at a veteran that is right at the end of their career that can come in and play maybe a bit of the first half of the season, and maybe that's it, be there in case of emergency. And I don't know if he'd want to come across and be that. I think he maybe wants to play a bit more football because he was almost at this position at Hawthorn where they were starting to blood in all these new younger ruckmen, and he was getting pushed out. So, I'm not too sure, but I'm not too sure. I don't think we'll be bringing a ruckman at this stage. It doesn't look like that's going to happen.
In an ideal world, we'd try and get a Stefan Mine, wouldn't we? I thought that was the best deal last year. It was someone we mentioned on Blue Abroad a lot. Said, try and identify one of these retirees, one of these old guys, and say, look, all we need is 2 years. All we need is 2 years. You don't have to play. We just need you around the system. We just need you around. And it's a shame we don't have anyone like that. I know Goldstein, he's on the outer. I mean, if Carlton could maybe have the sniff at that, Goldstein would suit the bill for a year. But I'm quite happy with Pitternet. I keep going back to it. I think his numbers to me say if we had good midfield structure, I wouldn't be surprised to see. I'm not saying he's going to be the best ruckman in the league, but I wouldn't be surprised to see next year we have this conversation. Good round the ball help, good structure. Him be in the top 12 to 8. I would not be shocked.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the The name I was throwing around last week was Cal Sinclair from Sydney, because he's down the pecking order. If they wanted to bring in a Laddams, I thought he's got that he's played in grand finals, so he has that bit more experience, and he knows he's behind a few at Sydney, so that could have been okay. But yeah, I think that you've almost sold me on bringing in Big Brad and just having him and TDK there and going with it. And worst case, we throw JSOS in the ruck again and we just play with another midfielder. Who knows?
Yeah, we could do what Sauce said, and Harry Mackay is a future
Oh,
ruckman.
no. Or you could do what Matt Rendell said and play Charlie Curnow down at the centre half back.
Yeah, it was Ken Collins, wasn't it? Charlie Curnow, key defender.
Oh, horrendous.
I reckon he's been in so many houses that are on fire, he's started to smoke other things with that. Key defender, Jesus.
Hopeless.
I like it. Well, I think we've covered most of the trade questions and stuff throughout. So I've just got one last comment here from Lone Wolf Anthony, who's loving the interaction the club is having with its members as of late. He said it makes you feel a part of the club and not just a member. And he hopes that it's a new Carlton at last. So I thought that'd be a nice way to wrap it up, because I definitely feel like all of these changes have created a fresh slate. And I couldn't be more positive, especially after this 90 minutes. I couldn't be more positive about, what's to come.
Yeah, disclaimer, don't blame me, even though everyone
No, it's all on you.
If it goes tits up. But no, I will say one thing. I mean, I feel strongly about this. Now, Europeans view their sport a little bit differently. We're very tribal about it. I mean, we meet up in derelict coach parks and have a good old tear up in the name of our team. But I do think the thing what I see about a sports club is it's all of them have got the same historical thing. So you look at Arsenal, you look at Carlton, it's a group of guys who were at a bar one day and said, you know what, I'd like to feel connected to something that's bigger than us. And that's what a sports club is. It's our way as a fan of being part of something. And like you guys will know, once you start doing podcasts, people come out of the woodwork and start texting you during lockdown. I know me and Terry can attest to this, that we've had people actually talk to us about real life things and saying, you know what, Pom, when you crack jokes, I'm going through this in my life and it really makes me feel better. And that's what a football club is. It's a family. We're all brothers and sisters. And whether we like each other is irrelevant. At the end of the day, I'm sure I speak for everyone that there isn't a Carlton fan that I know of that I wouldn't go out of my way to help if I could. And that's even ones that I don't particularly like, because we're a family and that's what families do. And Carlton have started to do that. The fact we've got chairman having a camera conversation and talking to us like we're real people, not numbers to him. We're people. I enjoy that. I enjoy the Diesel conversation where Diesel, they've left it in edited that he forgot we played a final in 2000. And then you've got Muppets going like, oh, he's had a head knock. Oh, he's not compos mentis. He's forgotten about a final. And I'm like, are you a neurologist? I mean, based on your profile picture, I think you're lucky to probably work in calls, my friend. So, like it's stupid. But that says to me the club care that they're not editing it anymore. It's not a PR exercise, because that would have been easy to edit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Cut, Diesel, you played a final in 2000, mate. Did I? Yeah. All right, cool. Right? You could have edited that. So it says to me that it's real. It's raw. That that rest in peace to Elliot that Luke Sayers did. Again, from the heart. You know what turned me on the most about that is he wasn't wearing a shirt and tie like Mark Legudichet, looking like, an Audi version of one of the Carolone family from Godfather. Like, that excited me as well, because Luke Sayers looked like a normal guy that you'd have a beer with in the President's Lounge. You didn't look like your boss. And these are the little things, because this club is the AFL. And whether the other clubs who listen to this, your Collingwoods, your Essendons, whether you like it or not, Carlton is this competition. Without us, this competition is just a load of guys in a vest kicking the ball really high up in the air and catching it. That is all it is. We have the history. Collingwood have the history. They need us. And more importantly, the fans make it. And I'll tell you what, outside of Liverpool away, Celtic away, I've never heard a crowd as loud as Carlton at sport. And that is what we're good at. Sometimes our songs probably aren't as good as their other ones, I'll be honest. It's getting there. They're getting better.
Yeah.
But the passion is there. And I think that's what we've got to remember, that whether we agree with the club or not, at the end of the day, this is our family. And whether people agree with you or not, I have always gone into it this way. At the end of the day, we want to win flags. So I don't care if Laddams is the ruckman. I don't care if Pitternet is the ruckman and I'm wrong. I don't care, because we all want finals. We've got to remember, stick together, because it will get better one day. But at the end of the day, if we finish 18th next year, will I be upset? Yes. But I don't really care that much, because I've got 80,000 people who are going to wipe my tears with me. We'll have a beer, we'll have a laugh, and next year we'll reload and get on the Kool-Aid again.
You have summed it up perfectly. This is the perfect way to end this podcast. Pommy, thank you so much for coming on and being our first guest. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you on multiple times throughout the next season, and I can't wait to finally be able to go to a game together and have a beer. It's going to be amazing. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, boys. Anytime.
Beautiful. So that is going to wrap this episode up. As soon as trade news happens, anything like that, we'll be back on here to bring it all to you and discuss it. But look, that's going to finish this episode here. See you guys next time.